Hey everyone, hopefully you're having a good day. My name's Andy, my channel's Finding Value. Today we're going to talk about uranium, do our daily technical analysis update. And what I'm seeing is I'm seeing some positive developments. Does this mean we're going to rocket higher? It's tough to say. It depends what oil does. I think, oil and natural gas, they're starting to move on up. And I think uranium, since it's in the energy sector, is getting some bids from ETFs, from mutual funds, from whatever it is that they're in. They're probably catching some bids as well. And I think that oil moves first. Natural gas looks like it's moving second. Uranium is last, from at least other bull markets that I've seen. So uranium is still, I think, an incredible opportunity. It is still very low in comparison to its value. Its prices are low in comparison to its value. And I'm going to go over physical prices, ETFs. I'm going to go over oil and natural gas to show you guys what's going on over there. I think we could be entering kind of an energy crisis almost as natural gas really starts to take off. It's going to have an impact on oil. It's going to have an impact on uranium, I think. It's having an impact on coal. It is hitting everything. So, let's see what happens. And let's look at the charts. Again, this is just my financial opinion. Do not use it as advice, please. And here we go. So here's uranium. So this is the price of uranium here. And I'm going to throw a trend line in here just to show you. We've got this trend line coming up through here. We came up and we came on back a little bit for uranium. So we are pulling back a little bit. Nothing really to worry about, in my opinion. And compared to some of these other ones, this is natural gas, just to show you, this thing's been rocketing higher the past few days and months. Crude oil also is, well, actually, I don't need to draw a trend line in here. The blue line, this line going across, we're breaking out of this resistance area where we could rocket on higher and move quite a bit higher on oil, which is positive for the entire energy sector. Now, looking at Uranium, we've got, I'm just going to kind of throw this sideways here. We're going sideways here. Is this going to just move on up, or are we going to grind lower? I think sideways to lower is still potentially in the cards, depending on what oil and natural gas does. If oil and natural gas keep moving up, I think uranium is going to get some bids too. So we're at a point where it's starting to get really hard to read because we're having external factors, I think, impact uranium itself. And some of these companies look like they're turning around. Others look like they're still pulling back. And it's tough to read an ETF because you're going to get these mixed signals. Is this a shoulder developing where we could still head lower? It's difficult to tell. I still think we might tag this line, even if it's a day or two. We may come back and tag it and then come back up, but I still think we're going to consolidate for a little bit longer before moving up. That's just my kind of experience talking here. Doesn't mean it's going to be right. Camco, again, looks very much like URNM. We are below we're kind of getting to support area. So I still think, we could kind of bounce around here sideways, is my guess. And I think that's going to kind of carry along for most of them. I think we're going to move sideways a little bit. We could come back up and create, like a bowl-shaped pattern and then move sideways a little bit longer. Fission's looking pretty good here with this bullish engulfing. Usually that means you want to turn and move on up in the short term. Pure Point looks like it's going sideways. Moving on sideways, don't really see any patterns there. Canalaska, this is a bullish piercing. I think we're probably going to move and chop sideways for a little bit. Sky Harbor, bullish engulfing. Usually that means you want to move higher. But again, we've shot from this base here, but we haven't created another base to break or move from. But we did back test here, so we could shoot higher. It's a possibility that we just take off. And whenever we get to these points, it gets a little bit harder to read because sometimes the charts, they want to pull back and then they take off. Other times they want to consolidate for a little bit. And I would say here's the hardest, at least for me, it's the hardest part to read, is the points where you get these little pullbacks, and they can literally either consolidate for a little bit or they just rocket higher. This could be a first leg, it pulls back, and then we create a big old third leg, in Elliott wave, potentially. But this is where it gets tough for me to give you guys a good direction here, because this is a bullish engulfing. Usually that means it wants to go higher on a short-term basis. And we're seeing Fission 3.0 looks fantastic. This is a bullish engulfing. It kind of came in, it's basing out, and we're putting in this pattern. So it could launch higher here. It very well could. It looks like we've already done the back test back here and touched it at 12 cents. So it does look good. You could also throw in some lines here, which a continuation pattern would look something, like that, where you come in here, it consolidates, coils up, and then breaks. And usually it breaks to the upside because we entered from the bottom. So this could be, it could be game on. And would I be a buyer here? I would buy it. And I did buy it, just to let you know, at 12.5 cents. ISO energy, I mean, it's got the same type of pattern as Fission 3.0. It's kind of coming to a point. Is it ready yet? Tough to say, but it is consolidating here, and we could see a break either up or down at any second. Standard uranium, it's not looking too bad. It's slowly, the buyers and sellers are slowly equaling each other. So I think this could go, it could turn and head higher here. It very well could. Base load's looking pretty good. It's one that I think looks a little bit easier to read. This is kind of your support here. And what we did is we came above it, ran into some sellers, sold off, came back to support, came up, came back to support. We're coiling up here. We got a wick on the bottom, which usually means the next day is an up day, which we got. And I think we're just going to coil up and then move and then head higher. It could head higher right off the bat, or we could move a little bit more sideways before heading higher. But I think below us we have a lot of support. I think this is a low risk entry point in here, and I like it here for me. Asian Court looks like it's trying to put in a bottom as well and move on up. So that one's looking pretty good. Denison Mines, again, we've got this support line going across, support resistance line. And I think this one's got a real heavy support there. We've hit it many more times than this other area. And we very well could come up, break it like it did, come back, and then head higher from here. We could. Because we're right here, we got nice support underneath it. And so I'd say sideways to higher is probably my guess. And UEXCF, again, we're finding good support. There's a lot of support in these areas back here. We're finding it. We're using it. The support lines, that is. There's one there, and there's a bunch of support in this region in here. And we've got a bullish engulfing pattern here. I think we're going to try to head higher here, sideways to higher. UEC, looking at this guy, I mean, is this going to head on lower, or are we going to head higher? Shoulder, head, shoulder, or are we just going to kind of base out, kind of finish the buyers and sellers kind of just relaxing and then head higher? We could, and we're seeing that on all these. Uranium Royalty Corporation, let me see what we got here for this. And I'm just seeing like where did it, yeah, see it's coming back and tagging it. And this can be pretty bullish because we came back, we tagged this line of the previous breakout high, and now we could head higher. And it looks like we broke this other rod in here. Downtrend lines like right there. So you could say this kind of broke out a little bit. So that's looking like sideways to higher is looking pretty good there. URG, again, it's coming back, and you can see the buyers are starting to equal the sellers here. That's why the momentum is slowing down. It's starting to come to a resting point, which is at support. So this could head higher as well. And guys, this could head lower too. I mean, for me, it's difficult to start reading these guys in this area because this is where you can get shaken out. And this is why I don't trade, I hold. Because, I mean, here you're coming back and you're touching this line here. You're coming back to support. You can see the buyers equal to sellers, but it could punch through here just as easily as finding support and jumping off this support level upward. But I'm biased to sideways to up. That's where I'm looking at it. And we're seeing that across all of these companies, and they did bounce. We're seeing these companies bounce here. And there's your support there, and you could see that we're basically hitting the support line and bouncing off of it. So sideways to up is kind of what I'm thinking, and we're doing it off of all of these. Peninsula Energy's got good support here at about 16 cents, and we could find support and move and start moving on upward. So sideways to up, and I'm saying that from basically the sector, sideways to up for the majority of these, and you can see that this was big selling pressure, smalling seller pressure. We could come up a little bit, and a little bit smaller selling pressure is what we're probably going to see. Bannerman looks like it's trying to find some support here. The gap is filled too. Deep yellow, this gap is filled. We've got some support through here. I like it right here. I think we're going to see a little bit of a short-term bounce probably. Forces metals. Let's draw some trend lines in here. For some reason, I really like Forces. I don't know why. I just feel like this thing's ready to go. There's your support line there. You came back, you tag it, and then you go up. So I think this is sideways to up. Looking pretty good. Global Atomic is finding support here. Like I said, the momentum came down and slowed down, stopped. Little wick on the bottom. And that sideways to higher is probably what we're going to see. Goviax is finding some support in this 30-cent range. That's the old high. It's coming back and tagging it. Are we going to move higher here? This is a hammer pattern. We could head higher here. We could. Sideways to higher is my guess. Laramide took off here. It's 8% up day. And we came in, contracted down, wick on the bottom, and then moved on higher. So that looks good. Centris, I mean, I wouldn't have guessed this move higher here. I would have guessed up, came up, and then a move lower. But it moved higher here. And that's why I do not trade in and out of these things. I would be holding on to this stuff because that's a big up day, 11% almost. So I'd hold on to that. That looks good. International Consolidated Uranium. Looking at this is what I see. It's got this pattern that's developing. Something like that. And we could see this thing pop higher even. So, I mean, I wouldn't be adverse to buying it here either. So sideways to higher. And National, this is Kazatomprom. Ah, man. We got the whole sector basically looking like it wants to go sideways to higher. This thing looks like it wants to go a little bit lower, but I'm going to say sideways is my guess here. And these whenever you get to these consolidation patterns, they can break either way, but I'm biased to the upside because the momentum came from the upside. And we're seeing strength in natural gas, oil, and other sectors around it. So I would suspect that buyers are going to come in here, look for value in uranium if oil and natural gas are moving up at a good pace. So I'm a bull here. I think sideways to up would be my bias looking at these charts. This is a more difficult read because usually if you're in the middle of a move, you're going to get a big move and then it comes back a little bit and then goes up. If you're at an end of a move, it comes up and consolidates for a while. Are we in the middle of a move, or are we at the end of a move where it's going to consolidate for a little bit and then move up? Tough to say. I know if you look at the big picture view, we're kind of at the upper end of the channel. There's resistance above us. Looking at URNM, that resistance may provide a ceiling above us. So we may consolidate for a little bit below that ceiling. And I'll show you that maybe tomorrow, what that looks like. And we're going to probably consolidate for a little bit before breaking out of that ceiling, if we're going to break it. I am inclined to think that we are going to break the ceiling because we're seeing natural gas take off, we're seeing oil take off, and I think uranium's just lagged behind it a little bit. So I wouldn't be adverse to buying some of these companies and cost averaging in. That's me. I would feel just fine. And if we see a little bit more of a pullback, don't be afraid of it. I would continue to buy into it, and don't be afraid. I mean, we might see this thing move on up. We're right at that decision point where it could go either way. Some of them look a little weak. Some of them look strong, like they're putting in bottoms. And whenever you get a mixed sector, it's difficult for me to get a direction because we've got some coming down, some coming up. But for the most part, the downtrends are broken, the sideways movements are broken, and they're coming back and retesting. So that's a good thing. I would probably be picking up a little bit of shares in your favorite companies if they look pretty good. If you guys like this content, give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And thank you for listening. This is Finding Value.